You are in an enviable situation in Richardson with your gifted and talented program. Thank you for allowing me to take a peek in the window.
Thank you, Ms. Shirley, so much. We're going to delve deeper into the findings at this time, and I'm going to start with student assessment. So we're going to be looking at the Texas State Plan now. We're going to go through all 5 sections of that state plan that I outlined earlier, and we're going to talk about the strengths that were identified in the audit and the areas of concern that Ms. Shirtliff has identified for us. This particular section deals with how we assess and then identify students for gifted services. And some of the strengths that she noted, I really want to make sure I draw some attention to. The first one is Robbie, reaching out for bright ideas, and that is the kindergarten enrichment program that is fairly unique to Richardson. It is not something most districts in the state of Texas do. They are enrichment lessons that we provide in the fall by gifted specialists to every single kindergarten student. It allows the gifted specialist and the general education teacher to observe those students, to look for gifted characteristics to drive those referrals. And it allows the students equitable opportunity to be exposed to the skills that are going to be assessed on their ability testing. The second one I'd like to mention is about Quest, Quality Experiences Supporting Talent, and that's the second grade talent pool program, and I really don't know of any other program that has such a thing. The district-wide testing that we do, if students do not qualify for gifted services, but they demonstrate some of the characteristics and show the potential that they may in the future, and knowing our best practices of building portfolios on our students and gathering work and interviews and observations, we place them in a talent pool called Quest in second grade. They receive about 26 lessons, depending on ice days. And they build a portfolio of products that they are able to use as part of their assessment at the end of second grade. So they are fully assessed at the end of second grade, and then the portfolio is used as well. Also, because of those 2 items and because of full battery district-wide testing, we do have equity of access because we are an equity of opportunity for all of our students. We have clear exit, withdrawal, furlough, and appeal procedures that are outlined in the IOG. They are fully communicated to parents and staff members so that everyone is aware of it. And I would like to say that something that is unique, fairly unique to Richardson, is that parents are involved in the appeal process, and that can't be said in every district. Also, the district placement committee exceeds the qualifications necessary by the state to make placement decisions. We also created a flow chart you have in your packet that helps as a graphic organizer show the process for identification. You have it in English and Spanish, and that's posted for parents and available for parents and staff members. Okay, we did have some areas of concern that we do want to bring to your attention. The first one, we have a great referral form, and it's divided into several different areas looking for different types of characteristics of gifted students. But there was a recommendation, there was an area of concern that it didn't include what we call negative characteristics. Now, what that means is if you have a small child who demonstrates leadership capabilities in a general education classroom, he may be perceived as bossy. So that would be considered a negative perception of a gifted characteristic. Also, our secondary students, although they do have the opportunity to be screened, there was concern about the level of the clear communication to parents and students about that. Also, another concern that was brought up was about utilizing campus-level individuals on placement committees so that there would be a local perspective to those placements. Now, I want to highlight some particular areas, and what we're going to do is look at some numbers, some data. We're going to start with a really broad view, and then I'm going to narrow them down a little bit more. Every year I provide for you our latest service numbers. So that's what I have for you on this particular slide. I'm going to talk through it just briefly. You remember in 2010, 2011, we were using achievement with a little bit of nonverbal ability testing. We gradually have moved now. We are full ability testing K6. We also know that we need to utilize our best practices and identification beyond a test, and those are called planned experiences and interviews and so forth. And so we use those, we began using those in 2011 and 2012 in something called Targeted Robbie. And we've broadened it now, and we're in the process of formalizing that process for K-6. What you see on your slide is a Q equals and then a number in the kindergarten row. And that is those who went to additional testing, because sometimes Targeted Robbie involved additional testing. Q means that's how many qualified out of the ones who went through that process. So in 11, 12, 92 went through the process, and 53 were identified for placement in gifted services. Now I'm going to narrow this down just a little bit more for you. You remember last year I presented to you that we wanted to make a move from screening first grade students to full battery of first grade students. And you were very supportive about that. And so what we're going to do right now is show you a baseline of those first grade students by setting things up for you, introducing you to this class as kindergartners, and then talking about where they are now as first graders. So the aqua color columns is our gifted numbers, percentages, K-12, as of this past December. And so you see that's how many percent we have in certain demographic areas that I've outlined up there for you. We fully tested all first graders this year, and it was a massive undertaking, and I would be remiss if I didn't take this opportunity to say how absolutely supportive the campuses were, the administrators, the office staff, and the teachers. They were absolutely fantastic, and we could not have done it without them. I also need to say that the team that planned it, our K-Quest team, was phenomenal, because it was a massive Rubik's Cube that had to be put together. And the sticky notes were everywhere, colored sticky notes, and it was phenomenal to watch them work through that process. So if you look at this kindergarten class, now remember in kindergarten they are referral based only. So I'm going to draw your attention to the LEP category. We identified 13% last year in kindergarten by referral only, but by broadening it and doing district-wide testing full battery all first grade, I'm projecting that we'll have 17% identified. But here's the one that I think really shows where we're going. We identified in kindergarten 15% of the economically disadvantaged. When we did full battery, I'm projecting 25%, and that's a 10% increase. And that's just by taking this test and giving it to every first grader. And I think those numbers, you can look at the rest of the numbers, I'm not going to highlight them, but you can look to see that we're making progress and becoming a demographically similar district. And that puts us in that recommended column, because in compliance, you would just be identifying. In exemplary, you are demographically similar. But because we're making progress, this is an area where we are moving to exemplary. One more thing. We're going to use this same baseline data in second grade after they finish Quest, and we'll be able to look at the data again next year and see how Quest has impacted these numbers. Okay, the section 2 of the Texas State Plan deals with service design, and so we have REACH in elementary school, realizing excellence in academic cognition heuristically, and then we provide our services through pre-AP and AP programs in secondary. So some of the challenges that we have in this area, the strengths, is that we do have a variety of service options, and we try to provide what students need. Also, gifted students are afforded the opportunity to work together with other gifted students at the elementary level. And that is a real strength. The state plan is clear that they are to work together, they are to work alone, and they are to work with other students. Also, the gifted and talented programs and advanced academic studies programs are coordinated by well-qualified individuals. Also, RISD Advanced Academic Studies conducts ongoing internal evaluations, whereas we did bring Ms. Shirtliff in to give us some outside input, and we do have the focus group, and we do have the surveys. We also conduct ongoing evaluations of where we are and where we need to be going.
And we did have a few areas of concern with our service design, and for the most part, it has to do with the way that we're serving the needs of our GT students in the secondary, which is through our pre-AP and AP programs. it's one thing to say that we're serving the needs in those classes, but what are we actually doing to serve their needs? How are they identified? What are we doing in those classes to move them forward, to allow them to express their level of giftedness in what they're doing in the class at all grade levels, grades K through 12. And so that's been the challenge for us in the secondary level, is rather than just lumping them all into those classes, what are we doing above and beyond that, rather than just saying in pre-AP and AP. So with that, moving forward, I need a new battery, I think. So we have 6 different areas, and these areas, these are options. These are support options for secondary GT. And they're areas that came from our GT audit, ideas that came from our focus group, as well as in current research. And so just briefly, I want to draw your attention, and we'll go around the octagon here, and looking at first our AP and pre-AP courses. That is an appropriate way to serve the needs, as long as you're providing areas and opportunities for either clustering, so clustering GT students together in those pre-AP and AP courses, so the students are identified, the teachers know who those students are, and they're actually working together with other GT students, as Monica said before. Next, moving on, you would go to cross-curricular, more of a humanities approach. There's a number of districts in the area that take this approach, where you can either have a true humanities course, maybe it's double blocked with English and history. In one district, it's at the 9th and 10th grade. You have 9th and 10th graders together that are GT students, and they're working on English and world history at the same time. They're getting a 9th grade AP or pre-AP English course credit, and then in the 10th grade, they'll get an AP world history credit. But those students are working together for 2 years and moving forward, more of a humanities approach. So that was an idea that came from both the Texas State Plan as well as from current research. Another area is supporting different types of pilots with our teacher training. We've done a lot this year in the secondary classrooms with differentiated instruction. And so continuing to work with our teachers on DI and how that can be implemented into the AP and pre-AP classes is another way that we can support those options. Curriculum, this is where we really have to move to no matter which direction we go, and that is having curriculum that encourages students to accelerate, also provides opportunities for enrichment and for extension of their learning. Letting the students drive what they're going to be learning, having the teacher be a facilitator of that knowledge, but really allowing these gifted students to work together for what's best for them and to find out things that the teacher may not even know where they can go. Another area is the program design. In the audit, it talks about internships or mentor programs. These are more designed like a capstone course. A capstone course, a theory of knowledge, which IB has, which we currently have at one of our schools, something similar at Richardson High School, but really a capstone course. College Board is piloting right now a new course called the Cambridge Capstone Program. And it's in the last year of it, or next year will be the last year of its pilot, but then it'll be available to any school district. It's a 2-year program that students are taking a seminar course at the 11th grade year, working together on a project for that particular class. Then into the 12th grade year, they work on basically a 5,000 word essay that they're working on researching, identifying needs and services. They're currently piloting that now, I believe, at 15 schools throughout the nation. And so that, once a student completes that, they will then also be able to get college credit for that type of course. And so we're looking at how can we possibly be prepared to launch that into the fall of 2015. And then the last area is the talent development. And the talent development is simply that, encouraging students to, for those extension ideas, bringing in professionals that they can work with, and being able to move forward with what they need to progress with.
All right. Section 3 of the state plan addresses curriculum and instruction. In the elementary level, we are aligned both vertically and horizontally. Something that we use within our curriculum is the habits of mind. We're helping students develop a growth mindset. You heard me mention them earlier. We have students who, gifted students often struggle with perfectionism.
I'll just speak loudly. Can you hear me? Okay. We want them to be able to develop a growth mindset to combat some of that perfectionism. The habits of mind has students, anyone actually say, what do you do when you don't know what to do? And so we want to help our students develop some of those skills. They're very well enmeshed with 21st century learning. Also,
Thank you. Okay, so the habits of mind are things like managing impulsivity, thinking and communicating with clarity and precision, listening with understanding and empathy, striving for accuracy and creating, imagining, and innovating. And you can see how those are so well aligned with 21st century skills. All of these components breathe life into Vision 2020.
And we do have areas of concern, and which one of them is technology right now, I apologize. We are, as I mentioned before with the service design, we are looking for opportunities for acceleration and flexible pacing. That's what's key for students that are gifted, that we give them opportunities to pace themselves. They may not learn at the same rate another student, or they may learn even faster. And so giving them those opportunities, which is very difficult to do in an AP course. And so looking for those ways that we can do that. Another area is that our goals for the GT services are articulated in the campus improvement plans and what those areas are. If it's clustering, if it is professional development, those are all outlined into each campus's campus improvement plan. Around the area of professional development, many of our strengths are that our teachers are receiving their 30 hours of foundational training. Also that they are receiving their 6-hour updates. I get constantly emails from teachers asking if certain things can count for their 6-hour updates or their areas that they are getting 6-hour updates. This year alone, in the secondary, we moved from 200 teachers having, approximately 200, having their 30-hour foundational training. That's out of 378 teachers at the secondary that teach pre-AP and AP. We're now up to 80% of teachers having their 30 hours foundational training. So we've moved a lot of teachers forward with their 30 hours. Right now, we're currently sitting at 90% of our GT teachers with their 6-hour update for the year. And so those things are ongoing, but we've done it in a different number of ways, both online. We've offered the 30-hour online training for all teachers so they can take it in modules, because we were finding that teachers would have certain pieces of the 30 hours, and so that was really hard to figure out a way to add in one more module or one more area. And so we developed a lot of different opportunities for online learning around DI and PBL, also utilizing Region 10 with their training. And then on March the 22nd, we're rolling out another way to do the training that will both be face-to-face training as well as online interactive, that the teachers will go back and reflect on their own curriculum that way. An area of concern is that we have a long-term professional development plan. Just as I mentioned, we've done a lot of things around DI, but what is our overall plan for professional development? And that's what we're working towards, that we have one. There's one set in place for elementary, very basically regimented of this is what they will do. Secondary, we provide a lot of different opportunities for teachers to get out and get different experiences that can count for gifted talent. Before you see this next video, this is something that elementary rolled out to all of its teachers at the beginning of the year to help with identifying, as part of professional development, but it was to help identify students in a different way. The video is 7 minutes long, and you're not going to sit through all 7 minutes, but we wanted to pull just a couple of minutes for you to see a different way that we're asking our teachers to help us in identifying students.
RISD provides gifted services for qualifying students. Why are gifted services necessary? The Texas State Plan for the Education of Gifted and Talented Students is a publication of TEA which guides districts in the implementation of those services as mandated in Texas Education Code. A gifted and talented student is a child who performs at or shows the potential for performing at a remarkably high level of accomplishment when compared to others of the same age, experience, or environment, and who exhibits high performance capability in an intellectual, creative, or artistic area, possesses an unusual capacity for leadership, or excels in a specific academic field. Gifted services are not a privilege, something a child can earn, or to address boredom, lack of rigor, or engagement in the general education environment. If a student is economically disadvantaged, comes from a culturally and linguistically diverse background, or has an existing learning disability, he can still qualify for gifted services, but he may not exhibit the same characteristics as the traditionally identified gifted child. In fact, he may have any combination of these identifiers and still be gifted.
So I think what hopefully you were able to see just a brief glimpse of is we're looking for a community to help us identify students. And that's what it's going to take. And that moves us into this the fifth section, which is family and community involvement. We had a lot of strengths here in that we keep our parents informed about the services that are available. Our parents of our GT students are included in our focus group, and also this year we were able to include GT questions in both the parent and staff surveys. Our area of concern is that we need to involve our community members as mentors for our GT students. Help them, give them a perspective of they were possibly a GT student, or if not, different areas that they can help in that identification and mentoring students along the way. Next, I want to just briefly talk about our focus group. Our focus group this year, so far we've met 3 different times, and with the focus group, we have, as you can see, a different list of community members, parents, staff, administrators, and the first meeting, we simply set a course for what our mission was going to be this year, that we would gain some insight, that we would present our program and where we were. At our second meeting, we brought in Ms. Sherwood to talk about the audit, and she gave an overall perspective of where we were and possibly where we needed to go, our areas of concern. The interesting thing that happened at the second focus group meeting was we allowed the parents to continue to think about the things that Ms. Sherwood was talking about, our areas of concern, but then list them out on their challenges. And so we had Charis describing and talking about all of our different challenges that we had. And then at the end, their exit ticket was to take the 3 different dots we gave them and to place it on the Post-it to be able to help us determine some of our areas, what are our priorities going to be. And so you have these in front of you as well. At our third meeting, we talked about some specific areas that we're going to develop subcommittee work groups. And the 3 areas that we're going to work on are transition documents from elementary to junior high into high school, and then website and communications. So 3 distinct areas that are tied not directly to the challenge, but they do help meet our needs of the areas of concern. And so that's our next meeting that we'll be talking about is the subcommittees, what the subcommittee's charge will be. But we really think that the transition documents will help us get a better handle on where the student is when they're elementary, moving into junior high, what are their needs, what are their giftedness, and how can we help move them forward.
Okay, and whereas the focus group also brought up concerns that we've already mentioned, you can see from here the priorities, they were already mentioned in the audit. You will also see some correlation here as we talk about the findings from the parent survey. We had a great opportunity this year to have some embedded questions about advanced academic studies within the survey. And if the parent had a child receiving a service like that, then they were able to go into some extra questions that the rest of the population would not have seen. And so we're just going to highlight a couple of these for you right now. The first is the parent survey, and you can see I took out 4 of the questions. First of all, we can see that challenging instruction and understanding of my child's GT goals very strongly and broadly, parents understand that, and they agree with that. Less so is their agreement about there being collaboration with their child's gifted and talented teacher, and interestingly, GT and general staff collaboration. But on that one, you'll see that 28% said don't know, and I thought that was something interesting to draw out. These results, by the way, are K-12. The staff survey, you will see some similarities. They do broadly agree that the instruction is challenging. They also broadly agree that college and career aspirations are encouraged, and that the services that the students receive do help them build, improved academic habits. Teacher and parent collaboration was also one that was less broadly agreed upon.
And so from these 3 different areas, from the audit, from the focus group, and from the survey, we have come up with 2 priorities. And the first priority is secondary service design. The ideas around secondary service design and how we hope to improve in each one of these is threefold. First, in STAR student, better identification or coding for teachers of identified students, so that all teachers, not just GT teachers, but our pre-AP and AP teachers, but all teachers know who their GT students are. Whenever they pull open and they open their roster, they'll be able to see that they do also have, general ed teachers also have GT students. Because we can't just wait and say all GT students will take pre-AP and AP courses. They may not select that area. So identifying and coding all GT students for all teachers. And that is already happening right now and getting those areas in place. Another area is our professional development, that we can be able to roll that out, not just to pre-AP and AP teachers, but to all teachers, that we have that available to once again meet the needs of all students, and including GT students that may not be in pre-AP and AP courses. And with that, we'll also go the professional development plan that is rolled out, that is a true plan rather than a bunch of different courses or a bunch of different ideas, but it's a planned activity that teachers will go through. And then the third area, and this is the most difficult because it's where do we start and how do we move forward? And that is exploring options of GT cluster in the core content classes at each grade level, and this is secondary, at each grade level. And what does that look like? Does it need to be at each core content area? Should it be in just one content area? And so in our exploration of this, we've already determined that what most districts are doing and the way that it would be appropriate for our students is to identify 1 or 2 cluster areas at each grade level in each core area, in 1 or 2 core areas, sorry. So for instance, this next year, what we're hoping to roll out is our 7th and our 10th grade ELA, that we will cluster students together in a GT clustered classroom, pre-AP, ELA at the 7th and 10th grade year. The reason why we can't do it, or why it's more difficult to do it at the 8th and 9th grade ELA courses, is right now those contents are being rewritten. Those curriculums are being rewritten. And so to be able to bring in a cluster and rewrite what's going on in the curriculum or tweak the curriculum to something that's not even been rolled out yet would be difficult. So what we're hoping to do is start with the 7th and the 10th grade and roll it up from there. Another area that we're going to look at and figure out how we can do it is the humanities at each grade level. And so that may meet the needs of the 7th and 8th graders with the humanities approach, but we want to really look at the 2-year approach that I mentioned before with the English at the 9th grade and the world history, AP world history at the 10th grade. A problem with that could be that we have to be careful about is that we don't change the curriculum too much with the AP world history to hinder our grades in those AP courses. In looking at this last year in the AP exams for 2012, we had a 65% pass rate of our GT students. So whenever you compare that, and that's overall, whenever you compare that to our non-GT identified students, they had a pass rate of right at 61%. So students that are GT identified are being successful in those AP courses. And they are taking the AP classes and the pre-AP classes. At our junior highs, we range anywhere from 98 to 100% enrolled in pre-AP for our GT students. And whenever you get into the high schools, we're looking at in the upper 70s enrolled in at least one GT course. So they are enrolling, but we can do a better job, and that's what we're looking at doing. The last area is the independent study in the endorsements that we can possibly roll in as an advanced measure under the endorsements with House Bill 5. And so we have time to prepare that class with the endorsements simply because those students that are entering 9th grade will be the first group with that. So that's just one more area, and that way we will hit most of the areas that we were talking about with the options, that we are meeting the needs of our GT students in the pre-AP and AP courses, but also in other ways necessary.
All right, priority 2 is going to revolve around student assessment, taking information that we got from the audit and being supported by information from the focus group and the surveys. We are going to pilot at Hamilton Park having campus-level representatives be a part of the placement committee. Many of their teachers have received the gifted training. We have the resources there where we can roll this out because we want to be able to get that campus-level perspective, and that was something that we presented to you from the audit findings. Next, we're going to provide the campus leadership with their district-wide data every year. They've already received their first grade data this year, and then provide them some guidance and a framework for using that data. I've actually met with all 41 of them to go over the data and use that to drive some gifted goals within their campus improvement plan. We will also revisit our referral form to see how we could incorporate those negative characteristics in it. We just moved to using the Lexmark machine to make those scannable documents, and so that's going to be a challenge in incorporating those in a way that's usable, good usable information, and still being able to use that technology. Also, to continue and expand using portfolios of student work for two different reasons. One, for identification, but also to assess the growth of students through the years. So their portfolio can follow them all the way from elementary school. Remember, we're creating the transition documents into junior high and then into high school. Hopefully, they'll be completing some of the things that Mr. Fuller has spoken about, and then they would have this very complete compiled portfolio upon graduation. Also, in the area of communication, we're going to enhance our website presence by making it a K-12 presence instead of an elementary and a secondary. We're going to unify that, and we're going to make sure that all opportunities for identification and assessment and services will be on there for parents and staff to see. We'll also make sure that it's linked to other pages such as college and career readiness. And we also propose that in 2016, 2017, we have another external evaluation. We value the information that we received, but we know it's going to take some time to put these things in place and to reflect on them, but we feel it's also really important that we have the opportunity to measure our growth and find new areas of concern after that. These are some references of some of our best resources that we just wanted to provide for you. Again, thank you so much. Do you have any questions?
Thank you very much. I know we do. I'm looking around to see who wants to begin. Okay, I know we have questions. Mr. Oliver.
Thanks, first of all, for a really good report. I've got a couple of questions, and then I'll let other people ask questions. The first one may be a little bit theoretical, but if nothing else, it'll just kind of help me to as I process this. You set aside for a second the fact that the state education code requires districts to have a gifted and talented offering. If you implemented differentiated instruction with perfect fidelity, would you need a gifted and talented program?
Yes,
You still would. Explain to me why that is.
absolutely. Remember the bell curve that I showed you and how far away those GT students are away from average? And what happens with good DI, with some of the project-based learning and some other things that we do in the classroom, we can address that next layer up. But what you get with a gifted student is a student who thinks so differently that oftentimes they are actually disadvantaged in the general education classroom. They have to have the opportunity to work with other gifted students. They have to have the opportunity to work independently and to pursue their passions, because that is where their giftedness is going to come to fruition. And they have different areas. So students, when we identify students with usability testing, however, when they get into secondary, their strength could be math and science. And so they may pursue those passions, and we've got to prepare them. I talked about the habits of mind and the growth mindset. And those are just good things that I talk to all of my parents about, whether we are serving their child or not. We can take those so much deeper and so much further. We work on flexible thinking and fluency, critical thinking, problem solving. We have children who go to law school or medical school and come back and say it was because of the services they received that they were able to figure out how to make their rotation schedule. And so that is why we need gifted services for those students, so we can make sure they meet their potential.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you. The only other question I had is if maybe, Mel, this is a question for you, but at the secondary level, you talked about the fact that our focus there is on AP, pre-AP and AP. Could you talk a little bit about what, we have some peer districts that we typically compare ourselves to. Could you just share a little bit of information about what some of those peer districts are and what their GT programs are at the secondary level?
One, for instance, that really does the clustering that I mentioned earlier is Highland Park. And what Highland Park does is that they have a GT cluster at each one of the content areas in the grade level. So they would have a pre-AP English 1 with a cluster of GT students. And only GT students can be in those classes. By the time they reach 11th and 12th grade, other students can opt into a GT course, which then helps them assimilate both students, really the GT students, assimilate into what they're going to see whenever they get into college, but to continue on working with other GT students. From what I was told by the GT coordinator, those classes, really right now, all of their classes, students are clamoring to get into those GT cluster courses at the 11th and 12th grade year. So that is one approach. There's other districts around that have it where they have the clustering, but then they also have special, not special services, but where they can go out and work in the community. So they get that mentoring piece. And being able to go out and work on their community service and bring that back in. Plano was the one that I was talking about that does the humanities approach in the 9-10. The 11th grade, they have American Studies, which is double blocked. So they would have history as well as English at that, so 2 classes back to back at the 11th grade year. And that's how they're working through and serving the needs. So there's no wrong approach. It's just which approach is best for our schools.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Greeno? When you're talking about that kind of clustering arrangement, what kind of challenges does it present for the master schedule and then the campus itself? Because I'm assuming those numbers can shift dramatically from year to year based on the types of students and the needs of students. So how do you make that work in the context of the sort of scheduling thing that we already have to juggle?
Right, and that is the difficult piece because whenever there's always different groups that want the perfect schedule and not to be up against another course, be it orchestra, be it athletics or whatever. And so, but if we're at least providing that opportunity, we have to start doing that, providing those opportunities, students knowing that that opportunity is out there, and then it comes down to a choice. The student can make that choice, either I'm going to be in a GT group and clustered that way, or I'm going to take this other opportunity. But that's also where the other opportunities for the professional development for our general ed teachers comes in. Because that student may not pick that cluster course, but yet if a teacher that is like-minded and is still teaching a pre-AP whatever or AP whatever, but it's not GT clustered, they can still work with that student because they know that that student is gifted, they're identified as gifted, and they have special needs to be able to show that giftedness. So that's why it would be a twofold, have professional development as well as clustering along the way.
I have a basic question on how do we go about identifying our secondary students?
That is a great question. And that is an area that we'll be working on with the flow chart that you were given, both in English and Spanish. That's the area that we need to communicate better with our parents, with our teachers. And so that is an area of weakness that we really need to work on. Because right now, we're not identifying students after they leave the elementary grades. And so we need to do a better job of that. And so that's that's part of that communication piece, being able to communicate that to parents and to teachers what is needed in identifying those students.
So would there be, and I guess this is what you're going to be developing, but if a child was in REACH in elementary, does that mean that they are automatically, as we're moving forward, that they would automatically be coded? Or are we developing some more ability testing, or do we have ideas yet? I know we just have the audit, so.
I think I can answer several of those questions together. When students transition from elementary to secondary, they do not lose the coding that they are qualified and they should be served. The state plan says that we can reassess students, meaning we could retest them and see if they still qualify for services, and we don't do that here. Because we can choose how we do it, what we do is we continually evaluate our students on an ongoing basis to make sure that they still have a need for those services. The state plan is also clear to say that if you exit a child from services, that it's based on his response to the services he's receiving. So if a child is beginning to struggle, maybe there are some other secondary issues that come about, that child may exit, the parents may withdraw the child. Those are some of the things I talked about in our strength because we have very clear policies about that. So that child is only going to be exited from services if the child is not needing those services anymore for one reason or another. Very seldom happens. Now, how we identify students in secondary at this point would be just the way we do it in elementary school, which is we provide ability testing. So we have that capability at this point. It's communicating that out in a way so that it is utilized if it's appropriate. However, we know in early elementary school in particular, we're looking at ability and